A year and a half ago, we set out on a journey to visit 50 yarn stores, one in each state. I started this epic crochet blanket to commemorate all of the different yarns that I would collect along the way. By the time we hit our 25th state of Montana, I already had 156 hexagons in this blanket, and I was ready for a break. It's been about 8 months since I've gotten this project out, and I am finally ready to finish it. So we're gonna get that started today, and I'll tell you the journey of the blanket along the way. Okay, here she is in this giant floater boat tote. This is a sewn pattern that one of my Love and Stitches members who sews, I do not sew, created, and it is perfect for a ginormous blanket. I've actually had it in this satiny like pillowcase for a while because I didn't want anything rubbing up against it, pilling it or whatever. And this huge thing sat on the back seat of our van for so long, and it was just taking up a ton of space. So I'm like, I need a break from it. And that break has turned into almost a year, I guess 3/4 of a year of me not working on this. Don't check that math. I don't know if that's actually right. So I have lots of yarn, can you see it back there, that needs to go into this blanket, but I actually don't know if I can put it all in here. Like, because I'm adding to this blanket in rings, I can only add so much before it doesn't make this right shape anymore. That'll make more sense in a second. Okay, wow, I have even more yarn here at the bottom of this. We're gonna have to sort all of this out and figure out where it came from. Here it is. It's huge. Luckily, I kept pretty good track of everything that I've done so far. It's the yarn that hasn't gone in the blanket that is the problem. So if you scroll through my Ravelry project page for this, I have all the way up to 156 hexies on here, what state it's from, what yarn it is, and what the colorway name is. I also put a marker anytime I started a new ring around, so I know that this is the first hexie of the latest ring, which is my 7th ring around, which will have 42 hexies in total. And then here is a marker for the last one that I did. I believe that's right. Yeah, that looks right. And this one is a Montana one, and it is from Mountain Colors, and it's called Yarn and Honey from the yarn store that we went to, also named Yarn and Honey. So let's start with a quick history of this blanket. It starts right here. This is the very center hexagon, and it starts in my home state of Tennessee, which is also where we started our journey. We traveled from Tennessee, and then we kind of made our way up to Chicago to start Route 66. We made our way diagonally southwest across the country following Route 66. Then we kind of went all over like the West Coast, and then it was chaos from there. We went to Colorado, we went to New York, we went back down, we started in the south, we went all the way across I-10, all the way west into California again. We went through California several times. There's a lot of yarn from California in this blanket. Eventually, we started finishing up all of the western states. We went to tons of national parks, and then we made our way back across the country, did some states in the middle, and then we ended in the Northeast. That was our last section of the country. We then had 2 more states to get to, also sort of in the middle of the country. We went to Ohio and South Carolina to end things out. So that was like our whole route, and all of that is represented here in the blanket. I'll tell you more as we go. Let's get this thing spread out. I am really curious to see how many more hexies I need to complete this ring. Hey, do you mind moving for a second so I can make the bed? No? Wow, it is quite big. This is a king size bed. Well, it's 2 twins put together, so pretty much a king size bed. So I don't know, I feel like it's like queen size width-ish. Oh, it's so beautiful to see it laid out. I had to run and grab a stool so that you could see like the hexagonalness of it. You can see like right where toaster is, it makes that like hexagon line. It's really cool. And I've debated squaring or like rectangling this off, where instead of going around and round, I just kind of fill in the top corners. That may be a choice I need to make. We need to count here and see how you can see that blue one sticks up a little bit? That's because it's the start of a new like ring around. So I started in the middle with that purple one, and then I went around and around and around and around, because in the beginning I had no idea how many hexies I would end up with. I actually foolishly thought that I would have closer to 50 different yarns in this blanket because 50 states. And that pretty quickly got proven wrong, kind of when we like set out on our first store. And I ended up collecting way more yarns. As you can see, this is only about 25 states, I would say. I know Montana was our 25th state, but sometimes we did visit a state before we actually went back and then filmed there and officially ticked it off of our list of states to visit. So I don't know exactly how many states are in here, but I'm hoping to get a record of all of that by the end of this project and put into my Ravelry page and have all of that very, very updated. I'm pleased to see that it's mostly updated right now, which is really good. Okay, so the next thing I need to figure out is how many spaces are left on this ring, and then how many yarns that I have. So let me start by counting. Okay, I only have 12 more hexies to complete this ring. So then if I wanted to start another ring, I would need enough to go all the way around, which would be 48 more hexies. In total, that's 60 more hexies to go if I want to complete this ring and then do one other ring. So in a perfect world, I have 60 more colors to add, but I don't know if that's true. What do you think? This might actually be close. Let's count them. This is wild. I have 58. If I count all of the different minis, some of these are like sock sets, so if I count the minis going with them, I could do 58 hexies. So that's a possibility. I could just maybe, there's a chance that there are two more hanging around here somewhere, but I think I also want to count if I just did like the sides of the hexie, or would that be totally weird? Let me count it. Okay, math here. So if I were to complete out the sides, I think this makes sense. So I have 8 hexies going along the side here. So if I were to start to like rectangle square this out, I would work these two sides on this side and the other side without working the top and bottom, and it would just start to make this more of a square, I think. So in order to do that, I would go from 8 to 7, to 6, to 5, to 4, to 3, to 2, to 1, right? So in order to do that, I would need 28 hexies per side. So 28, 28, 28, 28, and I did the math on my phone. Let's see. And that would be 112 hexies, which I definitely don't have. So I think we're going the route of an 8th ring. Okay, this is the part that I've been kind of dreading, that's been absolutely holding me back from starting this blanket again, is I now need to figure out the order. So for this entire blanket, I've been really honoring the journey that we've been on, and I've been putting things into the blanket in the order that we traveled. So I would, if I did like a yarn crawl or something, for example, we went in to a yarn crawl in the Bay Area of San Francisco. So I would take all of that yarn and go, okay, this all comes next. Now I'll choose the order within like this section. But if I was going from one state straight to the next one, I would be like, okay, I'm putting in, Montana first before I go to blah, blah, blah. So I now need to remember for all 58 of these, where and when. And it won't be too hard. It's just going to take a while. I think what I'm going to do is like put on a podcast and just start going through it. I did keep really good track in my calendar where we went. And especially if we filmed a tour, I have like an actual calendar event that says film at X store. So that should really help me, but it's just going to take some time to go through it. So here I have on May 24th that we filmed at Farmer's Daughter Fibers in Montana. Then we went to another yarn store, which is the last yarns that are in here. And it looks like next we went to Wyoming. So I'm going to start by gathering all my Wyoming yarn, and I think it will serve me best if I go ahead and start putting these into Ravelry. I might just kind of do something to indicate that these hexies haven't been worked yet, because my routine before was after I would finish a hexie, I would then put it into my project page. I also was taking pictures and putting them on Instagram. That is not going to happen this time. I'm just going to do it as I go, or I'm just going to like work on the project and not worry about posting it every single place, but I do want to keep track in Ravelry. So yeah, I'm going to throw on something and get started on this project. I knew that was going to take a while, and I'm actually not quite done. I still have a couple more that I need to put in on my Ravelry page, but an hour and a half is where I'm going to cut it off at this point. I think I need to take a break from like bending over, looking at my screen, all of this stuff. This has been super helpful though, because there were a few yarns that I had mistakenly put as like different states. So going through everything and writing it down has been really helpful. I even had to go back and watch a couple podcast episodes. Luckily, as I was acquiring these yarns, I was talking about them on the podcast, so that helped me kind of identify things as well. Now, there are a few yarns here that I haven't put into order yet. Like everything else behind me is in order of the states that I visited or the way that I acquired it. But there's a few right here that I actually got at different times and are just kind of part of my travels. There's a couple of special exclusive colorways. And then there's these three. One that was sent to me that is from, I'm going to forget. I think it's from Germany. And then two that are from New Zealand that my brother-in-law gifted me. These are not places I've visited, but I don't have any other specific projects for them right now, and I thought they might be fun to put into the blanket, especially if it helps me round things out. I know it's not really a 50 states blanket with these, or these yarns don't really count as a 50 state thing, so I'm still on the fence of adding these in. But the other thing that doing this made me realize is I am missing 3 states. I was not able to get the yarns that I was looking for in every single state. So this was my original plan and how things kind of ended up. I wanted to get at least one yarn in every state that was hand dyed in that state. And for 47-ish states, I have that. Some of them I did have to stretch a little bit. Like I didn't actually get one in North Dakota, but somebody sent me one. And then I don't technically have a yarn that was hand dyed in Hawaii, but Pineapple Yarn Co. used to live in Hawaii, and I was gifted these as well. So I feel like that kind of counts. So that being said, there are some kind of stretches, but as long as I purchase yarn in that state, or like maybe it was a special colorway, I'm kind of counting it. But there are some states that I definitely don't have anything. Iowa, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Now, I did actually buy yarns in all of these states from local yarn stores, but I bought yarn that's not suitable for the blanket. So for the blanket, I am looking for fingering weight yarn, usually like a 75-25, and then I'm holding it double, and it's making the colors really pretty. So I was looking for that, and in Iowa, I didn't end up getting anything like that. I don't know if I found a hand-dyed yarn in Iowa. Maybe that's what it was, but I did end up getting some alpaca and some DK weight. So again, things that don't go in the blanket. In New Hampshire, I ended up getting some really lovely local yarn, but again, it's not suitable for the blanket. It's a non-superwash. And then in Vermont, I ended up getting a sweaters quantity, also non-superwash, also not suitable for the blanket. So I might try to seek out some hand-dyed yarns from these states just to complete things. And if I'm able to get them and get them into order here, that may kick out my yarns that are not US dyed. I do have an Australian yarn dyer in here, but I did purchase it in the US and it is called like Pacific Coast Highway 1. So I feel like that's very fitting, whereas these really don't fit that. So I need to have a think on it. I think Toaster and I are gonna take a break. You wanna go on a walk, Toaster? Toaster? You want to go on a walk? I think we're going to take a walk, get some food, and then come back to this later. I took a nice long break and now it's time to get into the fun part. Oh, let me go let Toaster in. Just a warning, the Toaster may bark at us because he's sitting there looking at me. I don't know what he needs. He's already got everything that he is supposed to have right now. Anyway, I finished getting all of the colors behind me into Ravelry. So now I have at least a really good idea of them and it will be easy for me to rearrange them if needed as I go and actually place things on the blanket. The other things that I figured out is I put a post on my Instagram stories just asking for dyers from my 3 missing states, Iowa, and what were the other ones? I think it was Iowa, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And I got lots of suggestions for those. So I'm planning to order a few skeins so that I can fill in those states and have them in my blanket. Since I did travel to those states, I did buy yarn in those states, just not yarn that is right for this blanket. I also realized that there were a couple of yarns that I wanted to add into the blanket, but I can't find all of them right now, which is making me really confused because I organized all of my yarn and it should have turned up and I remember seeing it at some point, but it is my Sock Week colors from last year because we did a Great Outdoors themed and several of them are themed for places in the US that I visited. So this one, for example, is from Petrified Forest, or is to represent Petrified Forest from Yarnaceous Fibers. And I was able to find that one pretty quickly because I already worked a pair of socks out of it and it was in my leftovers bin. But the other two that I would love to add in is Polka Dot Creek's Waterton colorway, and then Little Bish's Stitches. It was called like the Great Frontier, I think. And I did not actually get into those skeins during Sock Week. So I don't know what happened to them. I actually have more yarn down here. So maybe it's in that, but I'm hoping those will turn up because I would love to add them into the blanket. So now I'm going to be over the 60 skeins that I need, which is totally fine because I have several like sock sets and things that I don't necessarily need to add in both colors. Actually, this one I probably will because this has a lot of variety to it. But like this one, for example, I don't know if I necessarily want to add in 3 solid colors all in a row, but I love the main color. So I might do the main and like 1 solid and let some of those extras replace it. So that's what I'm going to try to plan out now so I have a really solid order. How are we going to do this, Toaster? The bed's almost not even big enough. I need to be able to see all the sides. All right, I think I have it. And I didn't do all of the colors. I just did the first 20 because I'm going to try to do 20-ish in a week. And then there's the second set of 20. Oops. The third set of 20, which is missing some because I still have some to acquire. This leads me to the last thing that I wanted to figure out today, which is how many hexagons do I need to do to get this finished this month? And I don't just want to get it finished by the end of March. I want to get it finished like in the next 3 weeks because the last week of March is going to be really busy for me. So it's not as bad as I thought. I need to do 60 hexies and that will be about 3 per day for me to get it done in 3 weeks. I think that's right. That actually may be overdoing it slightly because I only need to do 20 per week, not 21 per week. So I just have the first 20 laid out how I want them to be. I left one space for Iowa. Hopefully I can acquire an Iowa yarn. And even if I don't get it like in time, which I don't think I will because I'll need to get it in like the next few days, I can actually leave it open and attach this hexie. As long as I get it attached before I come back around again at the end of the blanket, it should be fine for me to kind of leave a gap. So I think this is going to work. That also leaves me time to search for those other sock week yarns that I'd like to add in there. And if I don't find them, I know I can like fill in with these mini skeins, some of the mini skeins that I'm planning to skip. So all in all, this feels really, really good. I've got everything, all the information back into Ravelry. I've got a plan. I've got everything organized. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the ones, toaster. I'm going to put the ones that I'm not working with this week back into the bin that I got everything out of and put those back upstairs. And then with these ones, I've already taken a photo, so I know the order. I also have it written down, and I'm going to start winding because there's a lot of winding to do. I want to at least have things wound up, at least wind up what I'm going to do today, because I'm not going to start working on this again until tomorrow. I'm like, I need to give myself some space to sort through all the things. So that means I just have these to wind up for tomorrow. I am going to skip the brown mini because I don't really want to do a solid brown mini. And then maybe every day I'm just winding and crocheting. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to check back in, especially or definitely by the time I get to these next colors, but maybe even while I'm crocheting these, maybe even tomorrow, because I also have to remember how the heck to crochet these. We are back and ready for week 2. Okay, I have a couple of things to update you on since the last week. One, I have figured out how to do the hexies again. This took a little bit of toggling, and I'm really glad that I have lots of notes in my Ravelry project page. Interestingly enough, I realized after doing the first hexie that they were coming out a little bit bigger than all of my previous hexies that were already in the blanket. I actually had to go down a hook size from a 4.5mm to a 4mm, which I think is a G. I'm not that surprised that I had to change my hook size to get the same gauge. This actually has happened to me on another blanket that I've also had on hold for about a year. I ordered yarn for the missing states, Iowa, New Hampshire, and Vermont, one of which has already arrived. I also updated everything on Ravelry, so all of the notes with the names of the colorways, all of the photos, all of that is up to date. And lastly, I have closed the 7th ring of the blanket, which means today I am ready to start color planning for the final ring. I'm so sorry, buddy, but I'm gonna have to move you. I need the space. Can I have the space for a little bit? Then you can lay back on the blanket. Last week when I did my plan, I just did the colors that I was going to need for 1 week. So I kind of thought this week I'll just do the 2nd week of colors, and then the 3rd week of colors is going to get me all the way to the end of the blanket. However, I realized last night as I was making my hexies for the day that I was finishing up a ring. And I also kind of made an error in placing the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 colors, because I had thought that I was putting basically one of the colors in a corner, because the things kind of go like corners and then V's as you kind of put the hexies in. I don't know if that really makes sense. Clearly it didn't make sense to me because I basically got off by 1 in color placement. So last night I just made a whole bunch of hexies that haven't even gone into the blanket yet because they're going to be the first 8 for the new ring. And I figured I would place those while I also go ahead and place the rest of the colors. I have 48 hexies left to add. I guess I have 40 because 8 are already done. ish. And I have 46 of them here. I'm just waiting on 2 more yarns. And those I already know exactly where they're gonna go because there's only 1 of them from each state. My 2 sock week yarns that I was missing have not turned up yet, so I think I'm gonna have to count them out of the blanket and just assume that they're not gonna get there. Or I'm not gonna find them. If I do, I can replace some of these mini skeins maybe along the way. Basically, I just have these colors left to do. So they're pretty much going to be in order of the places that we traveled. I won't have that much decision making to make. So I think let's just get started laying them all out and see what the final product is going to look like. Toaster's Bomb is exactly where I need to start, actually right here in this kind of V space. So this is what I was trying to explain. I thought that I was going to have one color on the top of this hexie because when you actually get to a real corner, like this red hexie, you do 1 hexie on top and then it's got like 2 in kind of the V spaces on either side. And I always forget that my last hexie of the round, which was actually this one, this was the first one of the round, but my first hexie of the new round is actually not on a corner, so it's not on a flat part. So I had a color here and then a color going in between, and that just wasn't right. So that's kind of why I waited until today to add in all of those guys that are over there. So we'll start with those. I'll start here. This will be my first hexie that will go right here. We'll just work our way around. I try to be a little more picky about what goes in the corner, especially on this last round, because I feel like those stand out a little bit more, and it's fun to pick things that are kind of special to me. These colors all represent Hawaii, and they're just so amazing. So I do have to do a little figuring out here. It's crazy how similar these two look on camera. They are not the same yarn. They are not from the same dyer, and they do look more different in person, but I don't want them to actually be close to each other. I also don't want like pinks to be too close from each other. Same reason why I was trying to keep this blue away from this blue. I try to balance things a little bit, but again, just keeping in order. So this is not from any particular state. It's my Greatest Yarny Adventure color that I did with Woolen Women. So that can really go anywhere. And then these two are Alaska and these are Hawaii. So I want all of them to go in a row, but it's just a matter of where I put them. I also have this one that I can put in here to kind of bump everything down because this one is from Sock Week, one of the ones I managed to find. So I need to play with this for a little bit longer and see what I can come up with. I actually have a photo of my original planned order. That's what I was thinking before, which I think looks pretty good, so I'll probably try to mimic that. I don't hate this, but let me go pull out what I need from the bucket over there. We'll see what's going to be next to this one, and that will kind of help us double check. Here's what it looks like from overhead. I'm gonna mess with things just slightly before I take some photos. One of the things I'm gonna play with is moving around solids like these. I've really tried not to include solids into my hexie blanket. There are some here and there, but to me they're just not as interesting visually in this blanket. And so I've mostly purchased, different like speckled and variegated yarns throughout, but I really need these mini skeins that come with those beautiful speckled and variegated things to actually make the blanket, like make the final ring. So I think instead of staying with having them like all in a row, I might spread them out throughout the blanket just visually to balance things just a little bit. And then the other thing that I realized is I miscalculated by 1 hexie. So I actually will have 217 hexies in total when I'm done, and I've only accounted for 216. I really need to find that sock week yarn, and if I find both of the sock week yarns that I'm missing, I can even replace one of these solid colors. So just a little bit of messing with, and I think we're gonna have the final plan ready to go. Here we go. I think this is the final plan. I've left a gap right here for 2 states, New Hampshire and Vermont, and then hopefully another sock week yarn turns up, or I don't know, I get another yarn from one of those states. So there's 3 slots there. One, oh, you can't really see them when I point. 1, 2, and 3. And then if I do find the second sock week yarn, I think the first thing I'm going to replace is this orange guy right there, because I do have quite a lot of solids, but I have spread them out and I think they look beautiful. Like, I do think this looks beautiful next to these two, which is totally fine. But if anything, I do have another orange like right here. So that's probably why I would trade that one out. So it's time for me to take some pictures of this as a guide. And then I'm going to throw everything that I should do in the next week, which is like this half, and then put all of this back into the tub. I'm preparing to fold this up and put it away so that I can take it upstairs to work on it, but he's literally sleeping. Hey, you know what we're gonna do next? You wanna go on a walk? Come on, let's go. I really am taking him on a walk, I promise. I am in my 3rd and hopefully final week of working on this blanket. If all goes as planned, I should be finished by the end of this week. However, the last week I definitely got behind and I've missed a few days. I don't know exactly how far behind I am. I know I've missed at least 2 days. There was like a day in the middle of the week last week, and then Saturday we went to Nash Yarn Fest, and so I entirely missed that day. I tried to make up for it on Sunday by making like 6 hexies, but I only finished adding them in yesterday. So I need to really lay this out again and see like where I'm at. We are at my brother's house this week. We have been dog sitting. So I packed up all the rest of my yarn into this packing cube here. It all fit. I think it was like 30, almost 30 skeins in here. And I've started to replace it with the yarn cakes as I've finished. So I've got everything really handy in here. I've never thought of this for a yarn storage solution, but it works really well. I have this nice huge space behind me. I think I can actually lay out my blanket in full because it is getting bigger than a bed. So let's try it out. I'm going to lay everything out. Oh, I also have something else. I got this yarn this weekend at Nash Yarn Fest. It is a California Dyer seismic yarn, but it's a Tennessee colorway. And I think I still need one more yarn to finish out my blanket. I haven't found those sock week yarns. I honestly haven't looked for them, but I thought this might be a great way to end the blanket because it ends with something reminiscent of my home state of Tennessee. I started with Tennessee in the blanket. I'm from Tennessee, and then ending with something that's Tennessee. I think that might be cute, but I need to lay it all out and see. So yeah, I've got this big carpet here. I'm gonna lay it out. Hopefully the dogs stay downstairs. Getting this perspective on it is pretty cool to actually see it all laid out flat. I feel like I'm gonna have to come back over here next weekend to get a final photo where I can actually lay it all out. It looks like I've got 20 yarns left to add. It's currently Wednesday, early-ish in the afternoon, and I really do want to finish by this weekend, by Sunday. So that's 5 days, which means if I do 4 hexies a day, so just adding one more on, I could totally get this finished. So that's my new goal, 4 hexies a day. I've got this gap right here where I've left space for 3 hexies. So one has already arrived. This is my Vermont yarn from Mimi Fibers, and it's gonna go, I think, right here, because I think Vermont was my next state. I will double check. I ordered a New Hampshire yarn. I hope it's at my parents' house right now, because as you can see, I have these 4 to do today, provided I went to Vermont first. I'm pretty sure we went to Vermont first. So these 4 to do today, and then I will need that New Hampshire one tomorrow. I can leave a gap and then come back and add it in later, but see how the joining makes this really cool, like bump up like this, and it's hard to see. See how cool that is? And if I do them out of order, it will be different than the entire rest of the blanket, and that will drive me crazy. Then I was right, I do still have one more space left in the hexie blanket. I've left the space right here with New Hampshire and Vermont because I wasn't sure if I was gonna get more than 1 yarn from New Hampshire and Vermont, but I ended up just getting 1 from each. So I have this yarn then, and I think I wanna add it in on the end because again, it just makes sense to me to add a Tennessee yarn into the end of the blanket to just kind of tie everything up, which means I need to shift all these other ones down. So I'm gonna play with that here for a second. I do have these 3 solid mini skeins that are technically a New Jersey yarn, but I am moving them around. Actually, I have another one. Sorry, this one was actually from Virginia. I have another one down there from New Jersey. So I can move these around to kind of shift things as I like. Everything else, though, I'm trying to keep in chronological order. So I'm gonna play with that for a second, and then I'll show you the final result. Oh no, so we actually did film in New Hampshire first, so I'm gonna scoot Vermont over and just hope that I can get that one when I get back home here tomorrow. Here's how everything else turned out. I really, really like it. Again, I wish I didn't have as many solids at the end of this blanket, but overall, this thing looks so pretty and it feels relatively balanced, even though a lot of it was super random over an entire year and a half. Let me clean all this up real quick, and then I want to talk to you about my daily routine. The first step of my day is typically taking a photo of each of the hexies that I added in the day before. Since I'm usually finishing them at night when it is dark outside, I like to wait until the morning so that I can get really nice pictures. Then I add them to my Ravelry page and update everything in the description and in the photos so that it all matches. Next up, I'm gonna wind my yarn. Today, I actually already have one wound because I did it last night. I was hoping to get a few more things done. And then I decided I'm gonna pull ahead a few skeins because I only have mini skeins to wind for most of these. Those are a lot faster. I only have 1 full skein. And because my 4th skein today is technically one that I don't have on me, hopefully it's at my parents', I thought it might be a good idea to get ahead timing-wise by going ahead and making hexies for these next couple ones. So if I get everything done today, I will make and add 3 hexies and then make 2 more all the way up into the end. Honestly, it almost takes as long to add them to the blanket as it does to make those first 4.5 rounds. So if I can get at least a couple ahead, that will help a lot. Usually me winding and me actually crocheting on the hexies happen at different parts of the day. I try to do the winding as early as possible so that in the evening I can sit down and just crochet away. Usually I will crochet all 3 or 4 hexies all the way up to the joining point and then set that aside and work on the next one. When I have all the hexies for the day ready to join, that's when I actually get the blanket out and start adding them to the blanket. It's usually pretty late at night when I finally get done for the day, and then I can fold up my blanket, put it away, and get ready to start all again the next day. I am about to add in the last hexie to my blanket, and I feel like it should almost be more ceremonious than this. It's just a regular Sunday night. I'm Zooming with my Love and Stitches members, but I almost feel like I should be like in some epic location on top of a mountain, like adding this in just to kind of culminate all the travel. But I guess it's kind of perfect. Like, this is what I'm doing with community, adding in my last hexie. I don't know how to feel because it's been such a big project. And it's great. I love adding in the last one because you get to attach it on 4 sides. So it's going to start up here and be side 1, side 2, side 3, side 4. I don't know, it's just kind of fun. It feels very satisfying to connect it. So yeah, let's just join in this last hexie, and then this thing is going to be done. Let's see how cozy it is. It's a pretty good size. It is basically king size from side to side and top to bottom. I think I measured about 84 inches across, and it has just the nicest weight to it. Yep, I think I found the perfect way to spend the next few minutes until I have to go somewhere. So good night, and that's the end of the video. Cute butts.